Welcome back. In this episode, we will be printing output, formatting output, and creating reports with awk. So, notice I have print with no designation, so this will print everything. Here I'm printing the entire current record for both of these records. I'm going to clear the screen, and I want to show you what STTY is. That will change in print terminal line settings. So to interrupt, I'm going to use Control C. So that's an interrupt signal. So when I run a command like this, in which you can't surround a single quote, a literal single quote with single quotes. I'm going to press enter, and now I can't get out of this unless I use the interrupt signal. So I'm just going to use Control C to get out of this. And then to echo a literal single quote, use double quotes. Okay, so this puts me in a bit of a pickle with awk, because to print a literal single quote, I have to use the \47 octal value for single quote. So now I'm printing a literal single quote with awk. Notice that quoted text is colored magenta in Vim. So this quoted text is unbroken, but this quoted text is a bit broken because the quote starts here and then it ends where I have that single quote I was trying to use as an apostrophe at. So it ignores this double quote and the single quote. You would think that if it was in between double quotes, then the single quote would be fine, but it is not actually. Let me show you. So Control C, just holding down the Control button and then pressing C works that way. So this might be useful in case you want to print a literal single quote character. Okay, so the new line character, of course, is the \lowercase n. So in case you want to print new lines, if you want to print more than one field, you have to put in a comma separated list. Okay. So let me clear the screen and let's move on to a little bit of formatting using print. So here I start at the begin rule, and then I have print, and then I have a quoted text that will be the top border. Okay, and then I have this text. This is the actual text for the header. Notice that we have single spaces and double spaces, and I had to manually figure out where those spaces, how many spaces there should be, by running the command more than one time. And then we have the bottom border. And then the curly brace indicating that this is the end of the begin rule. And then we have the actual action statement, and we have our fields in a comma separated list, but then separated by commas we have double quotes that indicate how many spaces we want between the fields. So here I want one space, here I want 2 spaces. Okay, so here, this is very legible, and it shows us the columns in case someone is reading this and wants to know, which column is which. Okay, but this is very time consuming, and Printf was invented to make this task less time consuming. I'm going to clear the screen. Let's talk about the output record separator and the output field separator. So I taught you about the input record separator and the output field separator. The input field separator. But when we have our output, we might want to change the field separator and the record separator to be something else. Maybe we want to double space it or so on, but I'll show you how that works. By default, the output record separator is new line. And here are our records. So here we have in the begin rule, we're specifying the field separator and then what we want the field separator to be in our output. Okay. You could also change the records output record separator. So by default, it's new line, so that each one of these records appears on its own line. So the text will continue until new line is detected, and then the text will continue on the next line for the next record. But if we use two new lines, then we want to single space this with one empty line. Okay, so that's single spaced. If we use 3 new lines, it's going to be triple space. 4 new lines would be, actually that's double space, wouldn't it? 2, because you want one new line to put it on its own line, and then another new line for single space, and then another new line for double space. And then another new line for triple space. Okay, I'm going to clear the screen. Remember, in the last episodes, one of the last episodes, I specified, the introduction episode actually, where I specified that the variables have to be declared before the begin rule. So if we don't want to specify these variables in the begin rule, we can specify them using the V option, so that we can specify these as variables. Okay, so now we know how to set the input record separator, the input field separator, and then the output record separator and the output field separator. Let's move on to working with Printf, or print format. Okay, so the etc file, it uses the colon as the field separator. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is accommodate the longest string, and so I'm trying to figure out what these settings should be beforehand, so that I don't have to mess with them. So here the field separator will be the colon, and then I'm working on from record 1 till record 10 of the document. And so for the action statement, I'm going to print a literal field 1. That's going to be for formatting, and then I'm using the length function to find the length of field 1 for each one of the columns, records from 1 till 10, and then the same for field 3. So here I can see that the largest amount of characters for field 1 will be 8, and then the largest amount of characters for field 3 will be 2. So field 1, largest amount is 8, and then 2. So this is where I get my values here. So when you use Printf, you have the statement here that you program, and so this means character, and then this means the amount of spaces that I'm allotting this, and then this means string, that I have 2 blank spaces, and then character, 2 spaces, decimal, and then I'm separating these records by new line. Okay, then I have a comma, and then I want to specify which fields to print. So that will be field 1 and field 3. So here's field 1, and notice I'm accommodating these words here. Okay, I'm going to clear the screen and then replay that last one. And so notice that I have a furthest left column, or field actually, that's field 1. So I could left justify this so that the text would stick to the left margin. Okay? So now we know string, decimal, and left justified. Let me contrast print and printf. Okay, I'm going to clear the screen. And so, again, we have the begin rule, and then the top margin. The top border, and then the text of the header. Notice that these have different spaces that I had to figure out manually. Okay, and then the bottom border, and then semicolon, and then of course the spaces between the fields here that have to be also calculated manually. And so there we have that. But let's clear the screen and let's show you how it works with Printf. So we use Printf, and then we use the same statement, same programming statement for each one of these lines that we are printing, so that they all will line up with each other. So here is the top border. Let me make sure I have all this lined up. And then this is the text for the header. Okay. And then we have the bottom border. And then just simply the same programming statement, of course, comma, and then just a comma separated list with all the fields. Let's remove these spaces. Let's see if this works the same way. Right, so those spaces did not need to be there. So you don't even need to worry about the spaces or anything. The programming statement, whatever that's called for Printf, takes care of everything for you. However, you should use the length function to find out the maximum. So this is the maximum characters of the first field. If you know this, then the rest of it's very easy actually. Okay, let's talk about redirecting output of print and printf. I'm going to clear the screen, and so here I want to separate the data from the different fields into different files. So I'm splitting up this information. So here I'm just printing the fields, and then I have the standard input and then a quoted name of whatever file I want to create with this. So we got name list, and we have phone list, email. Okay, I'm going to clear the screen. So I just wanted to point out that when you use the greater than symbol, this means creating or overwriting the file. Okay, so that's what that is. And so now if I use this will overwrite list 1. Actually, no, that's double greater than symbol, so that appends, so that adds to the file. So this is very important to note, that if you want to just add to the file without overwriting it, you need to use 2 greater than symbols. But if you're creating a file, or if you're overwriting the file, then that's fine to use the standard input. Notice that, okay, and then notice that this will overwrite the file with the contents of field 3. Okay, so again, greater than is append, greater than is overwrite. Okay, so let's talk about commands within action statements. I'm going to clear the screen, and okay, so here we have the command, and this is a variable, so we're declaring command as word count line, and then sending that information to entry.count. So here we're just printing field 1 and then piping that information to the command that we have just specified. Okay. Here's another way of doing this. So here we're just going to print field 1, and then we're going to use the pipe symbol, and then within quotes we are going to specify the command, and that will do the same thing. So it depends on what you want to do. If the command is very large, perhaps you would want to make that as a variable in the beginning, and then just call it later with a very simple name. Okay, so here we're going to print field 2 and field 3, and then send that to names unsorted, and then we are going to send that same information, and then we are going to use the sort command, and we're going to call that names dot sorted. So now you can see the names that were unsorted, and now the names that were sorted. So I hope that helps, because it really is a revelation that you can run commands within the action statement of an awk command itself. Okay, so I have a note here before I get to the practical exercises here. I have a note here to clear the screen and go to man awk, then look at operators. Okay, so now you can see our arithmetic operators that we have at our disposal. I think I've already covered the division here, but let me just quit and move on to the labs. So 3 and 2. Okay, so here we are declaring exponent as field 1 to the power of field 2, and then we want to print the exponent is the value of the variable. Right, so that's how you use exponents in awk. So here, let's see what this is. So we have Sally has 3 numbers, Amy has 3 numbers, Randy has 3 numbers. Okay, so now we are going to notice that they all have their own fields, okay, like a spreadsheet file or something like that. So here, the variable sum equals field 2, 3, and 4, and then we're going to average that. And so the average variable is the sum that we have already figured out, and then divide that by 3. and then print field 1, and then print the average. So of course, remember, field 1 is the name. So we want to see the name for tracking purposes, and then we want to see the average of the 3 numbers that they have supplied. Okay, so in the next episode, I will put a capstone on this, and then we will work on some practical exercises. So I hope to see you there. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.